page 69 of African Cosmology of the Bantu-Kongo. Make sure you like the video, by the way, if you haven't already done so. And we'll read. One talks about, quote, committing a crime, unquote, in Western judiciary language. So language to do with Western law, legal systems. But in most African countries, and in that of the Congo in particular, one says nata nkanu, bearing a crime. One must discuss the contrast between these two concepts in order to more easily understand the African concept of crime. So it's the distinction between committing a crime and bearing a crime. This distinction is basically linguistico-cultural. Understanding, quote, le jeu de mots, unquote, word games is very important in any study of two or more distinct cultures. A word game is a keyword to intellectual or scientific understanding. In English, one feels a pain. In Congolese or Kikongo, one sees a pain, mona mpasi. When an Englishman smokes a cigarette, a Mukongo, which is a Congolese, a person of the Bakongo people, will drink a cigarette. Oh, noa saka or noa nsunga. In English, one smells a certain perfume. The Mukongo will hear it. Do you know what? Sorry, I have to stop there. Really interestingly, my youngest, he, for a long time, the first few years of his life, he's coming up to 4 now, but he always used to say, he would do that sort of thing. He would use different kind of English verbs to talk about something that, so he would, I think he would say, what did he used to say? Like, I hear a wee coming, he would say. So I hear a wee or something like that, instead of like, I feel a wee coming. And you say, I hear a wee coming. And that's quite fascinating, you know. Anyway, with him, he's certainly someone, I think he's like he's more connected with his ancestral ways, basically. You know, I think he is. I think he's much less. He's not really into the rigid time-based, get to this place at this time, do this at that time. He hates being made to do stuff according to a schedule. He just does things on his own, in his own schedule, and he's very kind of like multi-sensory, if you like. So that's just an interesting thing. But anyway, here we go. Yeah, so the Congolese, in English and Kikongo, you use different verbs basically to talk about certain actions, the same actions. So you smell a perfume in English, you hear a perfume in English. When Western school defines man as an intelligent animal or an imperial animal, or as a tool maker, as do the non-initiated African scholars, the westernized, i.e. the Kiyinga, the westernized, i.e. the Kiyinga in the African way of thinking, the Nganga, i.e. the initiated African man in the African way of thinking, who is a specialist of perceiving the world's things, will himself prefer to say that the human being is a system of systems. Muntu ikimpa kia bimpa. He is also variably called Nkingu Nkingu, a principle of principles. We talked about that before, i.e. the pattern of patterns. Because Muntu, the human being, is the key system of systems, he is able, as such, to produce materially and technologically other mechanical systems. And there's a footnote. For more information on Bantu-Kongo thought, read the forthcoming book by Fu-Kiau called Makuku Matatu. 3 something. Makuku, what's that? Sounds like kuku is chicken in Kiswahili. So that kind of sounds like 3 chickens. So maybe that's what it means in Kikongo as well. For the Bantu, in accordance to the concept expressed in the Congo language, man is not an animal, nor is he comparable to one. Muntu, the human being, has the dual soul-mind, or mwela ngindu, that distinguishes him from the rest of the things of nature. When the physical body dies, says a Muntu, the dual of that being remains within the community or out of it. So the soul-mind, when someone dies, when somebody dies, according to in Bakongo philosophy, The soul or mind of that being remains in the community or outside of it. The dual of the being, Mwela and Gindu, continues to act and to talk to and among the community's members, as well as to the world's community through dreams and visions, waves, radiations, and through monumental acts, the biological, material, intellectual, and spiritual treasures accumulated in scrolls, the past, i.e. the perpetual bank of the generating or driving forces of life. See figure 17. Where's figure 17 now? Let's have a quick look. Where is it? Conference somewhere way back. But what he's talking about, what we're talking about here a little bit is something on the lines of immortality. What the in the Bakongo worldview, this is how we are seen to be immortal. It sounds like, although our physical bodies have died, there are the energy that we've put out there, all the things that we've done, all the achievements that we've made, all the impacts that we've had on people and so on and so forth, remain in the world, active in the world. There is no end to the dingo process, the perpetual going and coming back of life, as well as in the Muntu's Mwela and Gindu. Life is a continuum through many stages, as discussed in Makuku Matatu. For the Bantu, there is no death and no resurrection. Wow. So we'll say that again. For the Bantu, and full disclosure, I would be considered to be a quote-unquote Bantu, a person of a Bantu nation, because most of the people in, most of the people below the Sahel in the continent of Africa, and certainly towards the central and the east, would be considered to be Bantu people. And this is, there's a lot of controversy over that term. Is it actually that much of a, is it an African concept, or is it a Western imposition or Western categorization? Big controversies over there. My brother Kamji, who was here last week when we talked about ancient African civilizations and the Nile Valley roots of most African peoples, he doesn't like that term Bantu, but for the sake of reading this book, rereading this book, and this is the term he uses, for the Bantu, there is no death and no resurrection. For them, life is a continual process of change. An animal's life does not have the dual soul mind, okay? It does not follow the process because the animal is not a system of systems, Khimpa Kia Bimpa. It's not a vertical being, it's a prostrated being. Animals are horizontal beings. They move and act instinctually. The Muntu, i.e. the human being, is a VH being. Kadi Kia Telama. Luimbanganga va Lukongolo. He stands vertically on his feet first. He thinks and reasons before moving horizontally to meet the challenges of life and the world. Interestingly, so VH is vertical first and then horizontal, whereas he's saying animals are just horizontal, instinctual. They just do things all based on instincts. That kind of, that's a big conversation to be had there, isn't it? Like, what's the difference between us, Muntu, Bantu? What's the difference between us people, humans, and animals? And this is something, this sounds kind of similar to what probably a lot of people would say, is that animals aren't, animals, I suppose he's saying, don't think really, don't reason, don't rationalize, whereas we do. These differences in feeling, thinking, and perceiving are, onto page 72, similar to the concepts of social and structural organization. Outside of the expressions drink tobacco, pull tobacco, suck tobacco, and smoke or fire tobacco, it is almost impossible to find in English the correct conceptual meaning a Mukongo gives to the term smoke in his or her tongue. This tells us how impossible it is to impose a new system that cannot possibly fit on a people who already have their own system of thought. In the West, one believes that he or she is born with his knowing power. The African individual who is initiated to principles of life and living will say no. Knowledge, and in brackets is put IQ, is not in us. Knowledge is outside of us. The only thing we have in us is the power to shelve the information or data in us and reproduce it at will. one cannot dance with ease in a borrowed rap. Some kind of proverb. One cannot dance with ease in a borrowed rap. And the Kikongo is Nlele ansompa ka utominanga makinuko. It is wrong for one system to try to manipulate or impose one's way of thinking upon other systems. Such an attempt only worsens the world's relationships, a confirmation of the total lack of know-how in the area of knotting, i.e. coding, and unknotting or decoding in one's own life. Kangaye kutula mu luzingu. But let us go back to the concept of crime. But let's just go back to what he said here. That one paragraph there is a very powerful paragraph full of little kind of strands that just, as I was reading it, I was thinking, oh, that's interesting. So, for example, he says there that he's talking about translation here, isn't he? Translation and imposition. So what he's saying there is that he says that earlier on that, you know, it's almost impossible for someone in it to express in English the meaning of the term smoke or moto. Is it moto? Yeah. Anyway, it'll be almost impossible to express what smoke, the Kikongo term for smoke, what that means in English. You know, because they're just two different languages, which, as he says there, he talks about, was that there's a term he used, linguistico. Yeah, linguistico-cultural. Languages are not just. How can I put this? Languages are not just like physical objects that are just there and they just do whatever they're doing and they have no, you know, languages come about. Languages are like encoding of the philosophy of a people, isn't it? And in the West, we are taught, and around the world, but the Europeans and the European worldview wants to teach the whole world the truth. That's what they have been trying to do for the last several hundred years. They have the arrogance that says, no, this is science, this is philosophy, this is mathematics, this is, you know, and so on and so on and so. This is intelligence. This is what intelligence is, you know. And you know, they have this evangelizing mindset where they go and, you know, this is what the truth is. This is how you should see the world. This is what, you know, the term for that is epistemology. This is what knowledge is. This is how you obtain the knowledge. This is how you know that you've obtained the knowledge, you know. And unfortunately, when you are born and raised with this indoctrination, reading this sort of thing that we're reading here from Bunseki Fu-Kiau can be difficult because you think, well, no, knowledge is just knowledge. Truth is just truth. Doesn't matter what language you're learning in. But that's completely untrue. And what that does, it eradicates or erases the culture and the philosophy and the worldview and the knowledge of different people. And unfortunately, what happens quite a lot is that languages die out. You know, I love to read about languages where there's only a few hundred speakers or 10 speakers of a particular language, and it sounds not very interesting and important. But think about it: once that last speaker of that language is dead, and the language is dead, you've lost. There's an African proverb from one of our African peoples that's something like, when an elder dies, when an old person dies, a library is lost. And that's kind of, it's a bit like that. Like when a language is lost, a library is lost. When a language is lost, the world, you know, a whole world, your whole way of seeing the world is lost. And returning to what Bunseki Fu-Kiau was saying here, he says, I love that proverb, one cannot dance with ease in a borrowed rap, meaning that when these Europeans and others, but particularly Europeans, when they've come and they've imposed their school systems on us, they've imposed their religions on us, and we unfortunately now have happily taken all of these things on, and we've convinced ourselves that these things are ours, you know, or that what we had before was worthless and evil and so forth, particularly when it comes to religion. We are wearing someone else's wrap, we're wearing someone else's clothes, someone else's shoes. We're trying to be comfortable and express ourselves and thrive and blossom, but obviously that's not going to happen, you know. So